everyone, and welcome back to Printed. I'm your host, Vanessa Gomez, and as this is our very last episode of the Department series, I just want to let the audience know that we're not stopping anytime soon. We're going to keep interviewing all those pollution professionals, and this time we have the chance to interview Laura Di Giuseppe, who is a project manager at Tandem Collective. So this time we're going to be talking about the marketing side of things in publishing. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and follow the podcast. We have some amazing guests lined up for you for this season that you do not want to miss, including professionals from editorial, publicity, and more. So without further ado, let's get into it. Today, we have an amazing guest with us. She's a project manager at a digital marketing agency, the Tandem Collective, leading the global strategy and international community development. Before joining Tandem, she worked at HarperCollins, where she was in charge of developing integrated consumer and retail marketing campaigns for some of the world's most successful publishing brands, including Tolkien, Agatha Christie, and George R. Martin. Her passion for international publishing brought her to complete a PhD at City University London, analyzing the fiction in translation market in the UK and the US. Please, everyone, welcome Laura Di Giuseppe to Printed. Hi, Laura, how are you?
Thank you so much, Vanessa, for having me here today. And thank you to all our listeners. I know that you met Naomi Bacon, the founder of the Tandem Collective, when she spoke to your publishing cohort at Simon Fraser University back in 2024. So I'm super excited to be here today and speak to you on behalf of Naomi and the team at Tandem.
Oh, perfect. I know our listeners are going to love that. And I know that I already love the company, so I just want to learn more about it. So, to get us started and to warm things up, I always like to start with a section that I call the What Are You section. So, Laura, what are you reading, listening to, and watching? It doesn't have to be with books, but anything that you're enjoying at the moment.
I've started to listen to a lot of nonfiction in recent years, and so nonfiction is my audiobook of choice. So I will read anything and everything from self-development to spirituality to breath work. One of my latest read is Breath by James Nestor. I have been rereading it because we'll be launching an event in Italy where I will be running a breathe along with a group of creators, and it's inspired by the work that James Nestor has done and the research is done on breathwork. I'm also super interested in international fiction. So on the sort of fiction side, I recently read La Hija Única, is the only daughter by Guadalupe Neto. Guadalupe Neto is an amazing Mexican author. I absolutely love her. And yeah, she's my fiction read of choice.
Awesome. Well, from my part, I'm reading Our Perfect Storm, which is from Carly Fortune, which is a Canadian author. So I'm reading that right now. And then what I'm watching is the FIFA World Cup. Since I'm in Toronto and we're one of the host cities, that's what everyone is watching in the city. So thank you so much for those books and for those recommendations. Now I want to get us started just looking into your bio because first of all, it's such an impressive bio, such a great start in the industry, and I wanted to ask you what first kind of pushed you to like get started in the industry, and then specifically why did you decide to join kind of the marketing side of things?
Yes. I think I came into publishing through a mix of academia and industry. I think I've always been fascinated by stories, but also how stories travel across languages, cultures, and markets. That led me to studying a master's in international journalism in London, and then further down the line, as you mentioned at the beginning, a PhD focused on publishing translated fiction, and in particular, the incredible work that independent houses are doing in this specific market segment, bringing new international voices to the Anglophone market. At the same time, I was building more practical experience in publishing. I started, and I know this is going to sound a bit surreal, but I started with multimedia organization, the Pokemon Company International. So I was in charge of the international publishing for the video game and multimedia brand, the Pokemon company. So yes, Pikachu was my boss, we can say that. And large publishing houses. After that, with that experience, I started to work with the Penguin Group, and I worked at HarperCollins for 10 years. I was really lucky to have worked 5 years in HarperCollins Children's, working on amazing brands and amazing authors like Oliver Jeffers, Dr. Seuss, Paddington, and then I worked on the adult brands that you mentioned at the beginning. Really a dream coming true, working on J.R. Tolkien, Christie, Game of Thrones. And I think, what really attracted me to marketing specifically is that intersection between creativity and strategy. I think marketing sits in that sort of fascinating space where you're not just selling a product, you're building a conversation with the readers around a story, you're shaping communities, and you're really creating cultural moment around books. I really love that. I feel very lucky to, have started to work in marketing, and yeah.
I love that. I love how you describe kind of marketing like that kind of intersection between kind of like creativity and strategy. And when I first looked at Tandem Collective, that's exactly how it felt for me, like such a like creative company. And for the listeners who don't know Tandem Collective, can you explain to us what the company is and kind of like what the mission of the company is as well?
Yes. So the Tandem Collective is a global marketing agency that is focusing on what we define community-led book marketing campaigns.
Mhm.
I think the biggest difference between us and other marketing agency is that we are a community of creators ourselves. In a recent survey that we run, where several hundred people were asked to describe Tandem, not one single person said they're a marketing agency. The word that came up over and over again was community. So we feel that we are 100% embedded in the same platforms where readers spend the time, and we function almost like a creator ourselves. That means that we can immediately spot trends and we can respond with relevance and genuine connection with the readers. I think you'd love to know that Naomi sort of defines the Tandem Collective as a mutable business. We have a core team that is supported by a satellite team that allows us to adapt into whatever clients need. When clients ask me, what can you do for us? I always say we can be an extra pair of hands for you. We can be an extension for you. We can do everything and anything, from launching a podcast to running an in real life event to launching online campaign. We really sort of work together and we adapt to what clients really need. We are a fully remote company. We don't work the traditional 9 to 5. Everyone works when they're at their best, and so effectively we operate 24 hours because we are an international company. You can't believe it. Naomi started with her business partner. It was just the two of them at the beginning. And then I started with them. And now we're a team of 30. So we are active content creators, community member, project managers. And that really sort of gives us an understanding of both audience behavior and strategic marketing. Half of our team worked in publishing houses before, half of our team is part of the active community of creators. So we really understand both the need of the publisher and what really resonates with the community.
That's incredible. I think especially if you're trying to like get to readers and like trying to attract them to a certain type of book, if you already have that connection with them, it's so much easier. And in that regard, as you're saying, like half of the team had worked in kind of like traditional publishing. You yourself had worked in traditional publishing. Having worked kind of in the collective now, what would you say is kind of like the difference between the campaigns that you kind of run with the collective and the campaigns that are run with like traditional publishing companies?
I think the main difference with the collective is that we don't start with broadcasting, we start with the readers. So rather than rely on billboards or blanket advertising or a simple unboxing video, we really build campaigns around real readers experiencing a book together, and that sort of book club type of experience that is basically a read along model and a read along format. Is really based on peer to peer recommendations, and is people reading the book simultaneously through discussion points, creative challenges that create a lot of interactive content on Instagram and TikTok, also utilizing platforms like Instagram DM groups and WhatsApp broadcast.
I think that's amazing because kind of you do get to a reader what the reader is. So either where it's Instagram, where it's podcast, where it's like YouTube, wherever they consume content, like they kind of get to interact with the community as well. And I think that's what I loved so much about the collective when I first heard about it. And it sounds like throughout your whole career experience, it sounds to me, you can correct me if I'm wrong, like your marketing perspective has changed throughout the years. Can you explain how that perspective have changed when you first started to now?
Yes, I think I can't underestimate how much I learned working for large companies like the Pokemon Company International, the Penguin Group, and HarperCollins. Those environments really taught me the importance of balancing creativity with commercial awareness and understanding how to build campaigns that are both imaginative and culturally relevant, but at the same time bring return on investment and bring sales. I think working with these companies also gave me the tools to understand the readership and how to connect with incredible and loyal communities like the ones that you can imagine are built around brand authors like Christie, Game of Thrones, and J.R.R. Tolkien. But I have to be honest, what happens in publishing houses often is that the pace is absolutely relentless. Teams are managing multiple releases at once. You're often under time pressure. So this can often limit how much space and headspace you have for innovation and experimentation. So I feel that being part of a collective has shifted that perspective for me, and it's given me more time to think creatively, to explore new ways of reaching readers. I mean, imagine I have a team of 15 people I can brainstorm with. And I think one of the things I value the most about Tandem is that creativity is often what matters the most, even when budgets are really, really limited. And I think that's how the this has been my path and how my sort of understanding of marketing has evolved.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. What I've heard from companies is like the publishing pace is so fast. Like you're handling multiple books at the same time, multiple releases. When you're like finishing up with a list, you already have fall, you already have a spring of the next year. So the pace is incredibly fast. Was that the reason why kind of you decided to like join Tandem and the creative that you just mentioned? Or is there another part of you that was like, oh, I love this company, I love how they work, that's why I want to join them?
Okay, this is a long story that might sound like a love letter to Naomi Bacon, but I have to be honest. What initially drew me to the Tandem Collective was the flexibility. It
Mhm.
offered me the possibility to travel extensively across the world from Mexico to Indonesia while continuing to build meaningful work for a roster of international publishers. And
Mhm.
that freedom at that time, when I started working with Tandem in 2018, was incredibly important to me. But a huge part of my journey in Tandem is definitely Naomi Bacon, the founder of Tandem Collective. She was completely instrumental in my decision. She taught me everything I know about freelancing in the first place and gave me my very first collaboration with the collective. After working for 10 years at HarperCollins, you don't think there is an afterlife. I mean, after working on the 14th floor, amazing building, amazing authors, you don't know what's possible next, and you don't know that what happens next can be equally exciting, because I think there's also been an evolution of me as a woman, my development. I think my 15 years in London were extremely formative, and 10 years at HarperCollins equally so. But then there was a phase in my life where I wanted to explore the world more. I wanted to spend more time with my family in Italy. So the collective really allowed me to keep working for the meaningful work that I feel we do for publishers, but at the same time, we're doing it with much more flexibility. I think also Naomi is the creative brain without the read along format that I'll talk a bit more about later on today. But I mean, she makes fun of me because I always say that she's a visionary. She's the creative brain behind the read along, but she's also the first one that they identified the power of nano creators before that even was a word, and the power of user generated content before that was really established by brands and became a sort of buzzword. And also, it's a bit what you were saying at the beginning. Freelancing often offers a lot of independence, but at Tandem, that independence is also matched with a strong sense of collaboration. So you're autonomous, but at the same time, you're supported by the team, which I find really beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's amazing because I know that people, when they, especially, during the pandemic, which it feels like it was 1,000 years ago, but it was just a couple of years ago, everyone was working remotely and everyone felt like in a silo. So it's great that even though the company is remote, you still have that sense of community. And I think that also translates to the marketing campaigns that the collective runs. They also feel like a community for the readers. And I think, as you have just described, you work freelance, you have the opportunity to travel, you work on campaigns, but you have kind of the pace to work on those campaigns. So I'm kind of wondering, can you describe to us like what a typical day in your life kind of looks like working with the collective?
Well, I mean, you would say that really not 2 days are the same.
Mhm.
So one day I might be pitching campaign ideas to publisher, another day I might be analyzing results or brainstorming new ways to bring a book to life internationally. For example, at the moment we're looking to launch a new creator event. It's an in real life event. It's going to take place in Tuscany with 30 Italian creators. And
Awesome.
that was born out of an idea that was run for 3 years in the UK. It was called the Tandem Weekender, where we had
Mhm.
50 creators every year gathering together. And it was a way to sort of get creators to enjoy reading beyond the idea that they had that pressure to post and to be sort of to post content online. So they just started their sort of reading retreats, and we ran them successfully for 3 years in the UK, and now we're launching them in Italy. And I think what I really love and what happens in my job every day is that we work with a number of different territories. So we speak to Mexico, we speak to Italy, we speak to the US, the UK, and we can share learnings and think that we learn from one market. And I think also what surprises people the most is that probably how much strategy and data sits behind creativity. So I think a lot of my days are spent sort of trying to be strategic and thinking about pre-awareness campaigns and pre-order drives, and when we're going to focus on launch strategy, when we're going to do an event, when we're going to create an activation online, when we're going to create something in real life.
So with what you're saying, like you have to look at data every day, even when you're like, planning these read alongs or planning like these weekends out with like creators. I'm wondering, I know that marketing takes care of that because I've like have done research with the industry, have talked with publishing professionals, but for people outside of the industry that want to get into these jobs, what are some kind of those behind the scenes tasks that no one really thinks about when they think about like marketing?
I think, yes, you're right. A lot of the work happens behind the scenes before a campaign launches, sometimes 12 to 18 months before publication. And I feel that as a marketer, the campaigns that have been most successful have been the ones that have had that long lead time. So where we were able to do that pre-awareness campaign and that pre-order drive. What happens behind the scenes is coming up with co-creative ideas, curating creator list, building schedules, managing logistics, making sure that the right book reaches the right readers. And there is also a huge amount of community management and a huge amount of client relationship building, because the community need to trust us and the publishers need to trust us. So this is what happens behind the scenes.
Absolutely. And I don't know, I think this question is kind of in the same realm, but talking about people inside publishing and outside publishing, I've found that a lot of people misunderstand how things work inside a publishing house or even in like inside the industry itself. So is there one thing that you find that people misunderstand when it comes to like promoting books, whether they're like authors or just like people that want to get into the industry or people that work in a completely different environment, and when they talk about your job you're like, nope, that's not how it works.
Yes, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that book marketing is all about visibility. So,
Mhm.
in a large billboard, at retail, in a TV commercial, when it's affordable, for example, in particularly with video on demand platforms or in paid social advertising. But in reality, and this is the
Mhm.
example of what we do at Tandem, it's about connection and readers' recommendations because ultimately books are emotional products. So it's not enough for readers to see them on a billboard, to see them at retail. They really need to connect with the content of the book and they need to share that reading experience with a cohort of readers online and with the author when possible. This is where I feel that the Tandem Collective really stands out because we really focus on community led discovery. And I feel that this is the most powerful book marketing tool, and it's trusted peer recommendation. And I know that I will read the book that you recommend to me, and I know that you'd probably be interested in some of my books recommendations.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about it's almost like word of mouth. Like the small creators get to like share the books like that, and that's how kind of people build trust with them. And I did want to talk about this like later, but now that we have the chance, I want to talk about, the power of those like micro influencers compared to like the big influencers. Why are the micro influencers so important, especially when it comes to like the collective and the work that you do?
Absolutely. I think I am going to start a bit with the origin story of Tandem and sort of explain how the difference take place online.
Absolutely.
So in 2018, Naomi launched the first in real time read along with nano creators. And as I said earlier, that word didn't even exist at the time.
Hmm.
But the reason why nano creators or micro creators are more important than creators with millions of followers is that they have a niche community that is very, very engaged, whilst macro creators with millions of followers might have passive followers that don't really engage with those accounts. So we feel that creating read along experiences with more creators,
Hmm.
more micro creators with higher engagement rate create a better experience and will have
Hmm.
more resonance with the community. And I feel that, and I can say this because we have the stats to back it up. We've run to date, I was asking earlier the team, we've run over 1,200 read alongs and we run over 2,366
Amazing.
campaigns for publishers across the world. So we have the data to back that up.
Hmm.
We feel that the engagement rate, the number of posts, they are authentic, organic, created by the community of macro creators, work better than say one standalone, quite salesy marketing post by a big influencers. They also will ask for higher budgets that often publishers are not able to afford. So we need to be creative. We need to speak to a number of different micro creators, and we enjoy that experience because we prefer to speak to 100 micro creators that might have a collective follower count of 500,000. Rather than just focusing on one creator that might not have, as I said, the same amount of engagement and that same amount of reach. And I think what we're able to do also with these nano creators is to create those DM groups and those quite special immersive experience that feels quite exclusive. They also bring the authors in. The authors can share videos, can share notes, voice notes on WhatsApp. So everything feels quite exclusive, quite specific. And that's how then you have that plethora of online content that takes place on Instagram and TikTok that ultimately drives sales.
I think that's such a smart strategy because apart from like having various creators talking about the book, talking about the author, you also create kind of this conversation between like the micro creators and like how like the readers interact with the book. And I think that's what makes the campaigns of Tandem so successful, and why, even like when a campaign is successful, it's like when you almost don't notice it. So that's why like the readers almost don't notice it, and then everyone starts talking about the book. So I think that's so smart, and I think that's like an incredible strategy that has worked. As you say, like you have the numbers, and I think that's incredible. And now I kind of want to move on to a section that I know that a lot of kind of listeners appreciate, because a lot of my listeners are like kind of getting into the industry, getting to know the industry. Maybe they've done an internship here and there. So I want to get into a section for the people that are just getting started, and for someone that wants to work specifically in kind of like the marketing side of things. So what are kind of like those skills that can make someone stand out for marketing roles, but specifically in the publishing industry?
I would say curiosity, creativity, and strong communication skills are really key. But at the same time, also the ability to learn and adapt, because the environment is ever changing.
Right.
So I think it's important not to be afraid of putting yourself out there. I know sometimes it can be scary, but creating content and actively engaging with book talk and bookstagram communities is one of the best ways to understand where readers are, what they're talking about, and how they connect with books. And that's a great place to start, really.
I think that's amazing, because I kind of, this kind of involves my next question. And it's like, many people think that if they don't have a role in a marketing within the publishing industry, they cannot develop their skills. But are there ways that they can do that while they're waiting for a job or while they're applying for jobs?
100%. I would say, as I said, don't be afraid. Start by creating, whether that's reviewing books online or build a niche community on Instagram and TikTok, or experimenting with content formats from creating a video utilizing trending sounds or a Substack content and newsletter. Marketing is something that you can practice every single day by understanding what makes people engage with your content. It can be a small niche, it can be based on your interests, from wellness to business development. And it's all about sort of getting out there and start by creating, really.
As you're mentioning, like these social media platforms, we definitely live in a digital world now. TikTok, Instagram, all those platforms, it's definitely where people are and where readers like consume the content for like the next read. And I'm wondering, if you're a candidate for like a marketing role, is it important to kind of build like your social media portfolio, or you don't have to worry about that?
Absolutely, 100%. Naomi and I have both taught at university to sort of MA publishing students, and we always say that building your own social presence really show that you understand how this platform works and how audiences behave. It doesn't have to be huge, and even a small engaged community can demonstrate that you have real skill. In particular, in recent years, I mentioned earlier the rise of UGC, user generated content. It's not about how many followers you have, but it's more about what type of content you're able to create, like your sensitivity, your ability to use editing tools, your understanding trends, your interest. So I think yes, it's really important to have an online presence, and it can be across any platform that you're interested in. Like, I would say that to spread yourself too thinly across too many platforms can be overwhelming. So select your platform. Can be YouTube, can be TikTok, can be Instagram, can be Substack. Just allow your voice to really shine, really.
I really like what you said about kind of like focus on one platform, because I feel like a lot of people, when they think about a social media portfolio, they think about, oh, I have to spread myself across all platforms, and that's kind of feels like overwhelming. But if you focus only on one, maybe Instagram, maybe TikTok, you just mentioned even YouTube, that's the way that you can create content that also feels organic to yourself. Like it doesn't feel like a punishment, like you have to create content for all these platforms. And having said that, create your social media platform. Now I want to get into kind of like the second part of, which is like cover letters and resumes. I know that you've worked kind of in traditional publishing, you're working with the collective now. So I bet like you have seen like kind of those things that in cover letters or in resumes that you're like, oh, people should avoid saying this or like mentioning this, or maybe like get more into this part? What are kind of those things or those tips that we can give people when they're applying to jobs?
I am going to start with what you shouldn't do. So I feel that generic applications are the biggest mistake because
Hmm.
it's so obvious that you haven't researched the company or the role. So I would encourage everyone to be super specific, show your personality, demonstrate that you understand the company's ethos, the type of campaigns that they're running, or even offer ideas. I feel that it's really important that you understand the company and the audience they're trying to reach, and that really, really need to show in the cover letter as well.
I think that that's definitely what I've heard from a lot of professionals, that they're like, if you need to research the company, you need to know if it's editorial, what kind of we publish, what kind of voices we publish. If it's marketing, what kind of like campaigns we run, and even if you want to be creative, that's something that they appreciate as well. So I think that's amazing advice. And I know that I've asked you a lot of questions in the past kind of like 30 minutes. So before the Q&A, we're going to have kind of a little fun break with like a literary pop quiz. You don't have to worry. It's super simple, but it's so like we kind of have like a break from like the big questions. So you can answer as quickly as you want. You don't have to overthink it. So what's your favorite book genre?
Literary fiction.
Nice. What's your preferred author at the moment?
I've mentioned Guadalupe Neto, but one of my favorite, I would say, Jonathan Franzen and Murakami.
Nice. What's your preferred book format? Hardcover, paperback, ebook, audiobook?
It really depends on where I am. I think I love my bookcase or beautiful hardback, signed edition, deluxe editions. But as I mentioned, I travel a lot, so audiobook and ebook are also my go-to format.
Nice. Do you prefer to buy or borrow books?
Having worked in publishing, we are blessed with a lot of books coming to us as part of our job. Um, but I would say that I prefer to buy it because I love to keep the books. And also, once I spilled tea over my friend's
No.
copy, and I will be mortified for life.
I totally get it. I totally get it. What's one book that you wish that you could read for the first time again?
The Corrections by Jonathan Franzen.
Nice. Are you a morning reader or a night reader?
I am a morning person, but a night reader.
I understand that. Are you a fast or a slow reader?
That's a very good question. I can say I'm a fast reader for work, and I am a slow reader for pleasure.
Makes sense. And if you could recommend one book to anyone listening, what would that be?
I think probably is the book I mentioned at the beginning is La Hija Única by Guadalupe Neto. Sort of the literary translation is the only child, but it translates as stillborn in English. That's been translated.
Awesome. I love that recommendation because I'm Colombian, so I love like a Spanish book that I can always read. So I love that recommendation. And now we have finally got into like our last session of the interview today, which is the Q&A. We still have three great questions that the audience wants to ask. So the first one is, how do you plan campaigns depending on the book genre?
Well, genres really shapes everything from the creators we choose when we launch a read along to the tone, the visuals, the campaign mechanics. So, for example, a thriller might lean into mystery, so we might ask people to come up with their theories on who done it and sending out whiteboard or case files. Whilst, for example, romance and fantasy can work
Mhm.
better with immersive community driven experience, and it was a bit more about word building. I must say, I really love a genre-specific campaign. In the UK, we run a romance readathon for Michael Joseph, cross-promoting a number of romance titles. And for Amazon Publishing, we've done a thriller-specific campaign called Thrills and Chills that, again, was promoting multi-title. So I think it's very powerful because you don't think about the launch of each title, but you think about the readers first. And I think this is how readers behave. Like they don't think about, oh yeah, this is another book that's just been launched. They think about a genre or a theme they're interested in, and that's how they discover your book. So I think multi-title campaign and genre specific campaign can be really powerful there.
Okay, yeah, that makes complete sense. And we've talked so much about Tandem Collective and how wonderful the company is. So one question that they have is, does Tandem Collective offer internships for people looking to learn more about marketing?
Yes, we do. We are always open to connect with people that are passionate about books and community led marketing. So you can start following our channels and engage with our campaigns. You can find us at the Tandem Collective UK and Tandem Collective Global on Instagram and Tandem Collective on TikTok. You can also have a look on our website, thetandemcollective.com. You can find out all about read alongs, blogs, and industry case studies that are a great place to start.
That's awesome. And I do advise anyone that's listening to check them out because they're a great company. And I love kind of like the read alongs that they do. So it's good to check them out. And the last Q&A that we have, it's a little bit more personal, but what advice would you give your younger self entering the industry?
Um, don't be afraid to take the unconventional path because some of the most valuable opportunities won't look linear at first. I mean, I started working for the Pokemon company and I studied philosophy and literature at university. So that really didn't quite feel linear, but I learned so much about intellectual property and branding and doing a marketing campaign with Nintendo. So that was really powerful. And also, I would tell my younger self to trust that relationships and collaboration will take me further than competition ever will. So this is something that definitely I learned at the Tandem Collective, and yeah.
Well, Laura, thank you so much for joining us. This conversation has been so illuminating. I know that it has been for me, and I know that it will be for the audience. I have learned so much about marketing in such little time, but from the way that you describe it, it sounds awesome. Even like looking through the data and the strategy, I think it all works out with the creativity as well. But before we wrap up, where can listeners kind of, I love the read alongs that you do. So where can listeners join those read alongs or get notifications for the read alongs that Tandem does?
So if you can start following us on our channels and then sign up to our newsletter, you can find out about all the read-alongs that are taking place in your territory because, as you know,
Yeah.
read-alongs are territory specific. So in Canada, there will be specific read-alongs
Mhm.
that are promoted by specific Canadian publishers, and equally in the UK. In Italy, we have different titles and different read-alongs for the international communities. So follow our social channels and sign up to our newsletter.
That sounds amazing. And one last question that I always like to ask any professional that I invite to the podcast is that usually people who listen to my podcast are either trying to get into the industry or maybe they have internships, but they're trying to get their full-time role. And they're maybe struggling, they're maybe getting like some rejections. So do you have any encouraging words for those professionals that are maybe having a tough time, but they really love the industry and they really want to get into it?
I think um, persevere. So keep going, keep emailing. As I said, don't be generic, be super specific. I must be honest, some of my application letters really did feel like love letters to the publisher. So don't be afraid of giving ideas, showing your interest, and also, as I was probably telling my younger self, don't be afraid to take the non-linear path. So if an opportunity arises in an area that is close to publishing, there's not quite publishing, it could be music, it could be film, something related to content, it could be journalism, it could be a brand that needs to publish a lot of content on their blog. take that job. Don't feel that you're sort of going off track, because ultimately you will be able to come back to publishing with that experience. Nothing is wasted, it's all experience. So keep going, persevere, don't be afraid of rejection. It's never a reflection of who you are, it's just what the publisher need at that specific time. But if there is an opportunity in an area that's not quite publishing or not what you thought your first job would look like, take it, take the opportunity, take the experience, and then bring it back to publishing.
Well, Laura, thank you so much for those words. I know that the audience is going to appreciate them and it's going to encourage them to keep going. And thank you so much again for coming into the podcast. It was such an amazing conversation.
Thank you, Vanessa, for having me, and thank you from the team at the Tandem Collective and from Naomi.
And that's it for today's episode. And this brings to a closure our department series because we've been through every single department in publishing. However, this does not mean that the podcast is ending anytime soon. We're going to keep looking for those publishing professionals working within traditional companies or freelance or even in those book adjacent companies so you can keep learning more about the publishing industry. You can visit publishingguide.com for further sources and information about this season's guests. Follow us on Instagram at the Publishing Guide for updates and behind the scenes content. Leave in the comments any questions that you want to see in any future Q&As. And please remember that this month we're also launching Printed in Conversation, which is a series dedicated to talking with authors. So make sure to follow and subscribe so you don't miss those first few episodes of Printed in Conversation. Please note that any views expressed in this podcast are personal and do not reflect the opinions of the host or guest employers. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.